Welcome back, guys, to another episode of The Fifth Horseman, where we talk about the ongoing societal collapse we deserve, not the one we wanted. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the state of the world. We'll hit on the mass event in Idaho last weekend, a quick update on the Russia-Iran wars, and what was probably the left's most recent failed attempt on Trump again. So let's get into it. Late to the game on this since finding time to YouTube is hard, but you probably heard about the shooting that took place this past Saturday, August 1st, at the In-N-Out Burger in Twin Falls, Idaho. The gunman was later identified as Chad Williams Jr. He was discovered dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after encountering resistance from an off-duty police officer and, more importantly, an armed civilian identified later as Jordan Salinas. Salinas credited being involved or at least knowing about an earlier shooting in his area that led to him taking training and carrying a concealed weapon more seriously. Now, if you bother to look up Jordan, you'll find what some people consider to be a little bit of an eccentric character, but you know what? God bless him for it. He was out living his life that day. He's not some former vet bro off a podcast. He's not a gun tuber per se, although his channel called Poverty Operator does show some of his videos of him training, so feel free to check him out, and I'll link him down below. What I love most about him is his choice of not only carrying that day, or every day it seems like, but also using a suppressed pistol, which I think may be the first use of an NFA item in U.S. history, if not for self-defense, at least in the stopping of a potential mass event. I think the key takeaway from this event are pretty obvious. If God forbid you're ever in a situation like this, which despite the liberal media reporting is a pretty unlikely event, there's no guarantee anyone is going to show up to save you. If they do, there's a good chance it's going to look something like this guy. Given that knowledge, you should really consider acquiring your own concealed carry license if you don't live in a communist state, and train whenever possible, and definitely carry whenever and wherever you can. Definitely outside in public and even at home. Educate yourself on medical training and take of course if you can. There's offered local courses, and some people travel to take medical courses, especially on stopping the bleed. Along with that, you should either purchase a pre-built first aid kit geared toward these types of events and keep them accessible in all your vehicles. They definitely could increase the chance of survival of anyone injured on scene. To keep those kits simple, they should include multiple tourniquets that help stop bleeding on limb-related wounds, a hemostatic agent like Quick Clot or Celox. It usually comes packaged as an impregnated gauze strip, and you can pack that into a wound to help stop bleeding, and then cover with a pressure bandage. Pressure bandages come pre-assembled, but you can also make them yourself from rolled S gauze and some sort of secondary gauze. Lastly, a set of Bowl-invented chest seals. These are going to be something that you peel and stick onto the front entry wound, and if there is one, an exit wound. They're going to help prevent lung collapse in the event of a sucking chest wound. While there's more advanced items you can get, like decompression needles and nasal pharyngeal airways, tubes, these are going to be best left to people trained in their use. But you could consider including them in some of your kits in the event someone trained in them does happen to arrive on scene and just doesn't have their own items available. Lastly, this was something I touched on in my last video, but be aware of your surroundings. You know, the reality of the world we live in is that people with intent to do harm will often seek out the softest targets. For many of those, they're going to be places we frequent throughout our day-to-day. In this event, it was a fast food restaurant, but in the past, it's been schools, movie theaters, churches, etc. And while the overall violent crime metrics are trending down in the U.S., pretty much the lowest since the 1990s for violent crime and gun crime, it doesn't mean you should head out your door unprepared. So lock in and kind of keep your head on a swivel when you go out. Heading to international affairs, all the wars and rumors of wars are pretty much still going on. Ukraine continues to be an episode of Black Mirror where FPV drones are responsible for shockingly like 70 to 90% of the casualties. However, with mainstream media reporting the interceptor missile inventory is dwindling on the Ukraine side, coupled with the U.S. retention of our own existing stockpiles to assist with base defense throughout the Middle East against Iran's missiles, the shock and awe tactic of strategic missile strikes may be coming to a close, or at least they're going to be more targeted. That's going to definitely be more complicated, or at least the theater of war is going to be more complicated this coming winter with some of the oil shortages and energy shortages in general. Those are going to be resulting from both the Iran conflict, but also the Russia conflict. They're reaching a peak in both. Meanwhile, in Russia, it could be hitting a point of no return. Some open source reporting is talking about people waiting in lines for hours for gas, and in some instances, brawls are breaking out with locals moving to prevent ration fuel from reaching government officials and possibly even law enforcement and military. So that's definitely something concerning that Russia may end up cracking down on. On the Iran side of things, more of the same. Occasional unimpressive strikes from Iranian ballistic missiles or Shahed drones, followed by U.S. strikes in retaliation, with the occasional strategic pause, to allow for opportunities to negotiate. News headlines are claiming that could be imminent, but TBD. While the regional shuffle taking place is somewhat boring and played out at this point, the recent cyber attacks, seemingly launched by Iran against U.S. water supplies this past week, is definitely of interest. While water treatment facilities have been exposed in the past for not having the best protection against cyber attacks, Iran is very much into playing the long game when it comes to conflict. And I think they know any attack against U.S. civilians that ended in casualties wouldn't be tolerated. To that end, I kind of consider the cyber attack against these water treatment plants I think it's like 12 states now, to more or less be a shot across the bow. At least that's their intent. It's kind of a bluff by the regime over in Iran. They know their missiles can't reach us, but a potential threat to vital infrastructure is probably a gamble to get the civilian population to more aggressively oppose the war. With that in mind, take care of yourselves. FEMA is always advising 1 gallon of water per person per day. I would probably go and just up that to 2 gallons per person per day for you, everybody in your family, and store that for up to a week. There's more than enough time for infrastructure to get back online for something that does come down at that point. But you should definitely look into procuring alternate means of supply, water filtration, and other sources other than just going to the store. We also what happened during COVID for toilet paper, so I can only imagine if that was involving something like water. Last, we'll cover an interesting piece of news, something that's not entirely unexpected at this point, unfortunately, but an armed man named Janine John Teal, I guess, sorry for the pronunciation, he was arrested at Trump's National Golf Club in Los Angeles, California. He had a U.S. military background as a Marine, past employment as a licensed armed security guard, and he was found to be in possession in his vehicle and home for some handguns and short-barreled rifles. Now, I don't take issue with the weapons themselves in this case. California is probably one of the most communist states in the U.S. as far as gun control is concerned. So for these state-level charges, they're kind of a complete joke. They have stupid, unconstitutional laws out there against hollow point ammunition, standard capacity magazines that the news is falsely reporting as high capacity, as well as, quote, bulk ammo, which for anyone who shoots knows that a few hundred to a few thousand rounds is a pretty normal amount of ammo to keep around your house. It's basically a couple of shoe boxes full. So there's really nothing alarming about that. They're also trying to charge him federally with an illegal modified short barrel rifle, which is very much a joke itself, given how ancient the NFA is. But also given that there was a recent federal district court in Texas that has struck down the NFA, or at least the tax and registration requirements as unconstitutional. That was struck down as applied to members of a handful of Pro-2A groups, both present members and future. So I feel like all Mr. Teal has to do to become a member of one of those groups, and that would end up leading to a federal charge. Well, it should at least be dropped, but we'll see about that. However, the rest of the incident is definitely suspicious and warrants further investigation. Apparently, when confronted, he claimed to be part of a security detail in advance of the presidential visit. Also, he was in possession of LE-style badge. They're claiming they found concerning diary entries at his house, whatever that means. So it's possible this was a dry run for something worse. The possession of a badge indicates he may have been planning to try and blend in as local law enforcement on game day. I know that wouldn't have necessarily worked very well for reasons I won't get into, but it's definitely a concerning attempt nonetheless. I think it's obvious after the events in Butler, PA, and the attempt made there that the Secret Service advanced team and how they conduct threat surveys ahead of time has definitely been modified and improved. Otherwise, no one may have noticed this guy walking around the grounds, especially considering there was some reports that he was walking around with a potential fake earpiece, like connected to a radio to try to blend in. If we learn anything from Butler event and how the same TTPs were eerily replicated with the Charlie Kirk assassination, it's that everyone attending mass events, especially politically charged ones, needs to keep their head on a swivel. And pointing out things or people who don't look right to local law enforcement, or any law enforcement really, is never a bad thing. Whether it's a political event, a concert venue, or some sort of low IQ protest going on downtown full of blue hairs, no one should ever have to pay with their life simply for showing up. So stay frosty out there. Well, that wraps up this overdue update. I know I'm yelling into the void at this stage on the channel, but if you like watching a degenerate like me grow a channel from nothing to a little bit more than nothing with some better content, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. If you want to reach out directly, you can try here in the comments or on X at the Fifth Horseman with a 3. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.